Okay, thank you very much, Sandy. And welcome to this meeting of the Needham Historical Commission. As a very preliminary matter, what I am going to, I am Rose Doherty, a vice chair of the Needham Historical Commission. And I'm going to confirm that all members and persons are present and can hear me. So, Don Lankowitz.
Here.
Thank you. Rick Hardy.
I can hear you.
Okay. Dylan Adia. Okay. Laura Dorfman.
Here.
Okay. And I am here. And Gloria is absent. And Jeff, can you hear us yet?
I can hear you.
Okay. You can't see us.
I can't
All right.
see you. Why can't I see you?
Jeff, can you start your video?
I say it says join with
It
I
should
don't know.
say join with video someplace there.
yes, and it's got the little logo with waiting, turning. Hang on, let me see it. Let me try it again.
Okay, and while Jeff is doing that, because we know that he can hear us, I will just continue to read the information about remotely conducted meetings. This is an open meeting of the Needham Historical Commission. It's being conducted remotely as consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020. That's how long we've been in this, folks. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. For this meeting, January 11th, 2021, the Needham Historical Commission is convening by Zoom as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Now, please note that the meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and also take care not to screen share your computer. The recording of this meeting is a public document, and anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. The meeting materials. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise and the vice chair is not noting otherwise. The business ground rules. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda, but before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each item on the agenda, and I will go down the line of members after remarks have been made, and it will invite each by name to provide comment, questions, motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. And remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. All right, let us get on with it. Hello, Jeff. There you are. Good. Okay, the first.
You can
item
see
on-
me?
Yes.
Unfortunately,
Like I said, I can't see you, and it's still doing its funky thing, and but I can hear, so I can take notes.
Okay, excellent.
I'm just looking at myself. I don't like looking at myself.
Okay. We are going, the first item is the minutes of the December 14th, 2020 meeting. And I have some comments, and I imagine others do also.
I have to leave. Oh, something's going on here. I'm out of here.
Okay. Jeff, are you back with us now? Well, okay, we're going to continue, and if you guys would keep some notes, and I will keep some also until Jeff comes back to us. The minutes. The first item that I have is that the minutes to be approved are the first item in the minutes is the last meeting that we had before December, and it was October 26th. I would like to see that a note that the November meeting was canceled was be put in there, just because it will help anyone trying to keep a record. If someone goes, wait a minute, what happened to November? If we just have a short sentence that says the November 2020 meeting was canceled, it just makes life a little bit easier. Any disagreements there?
No.
Okay. Are there other comments about the minutes? Rick, I would like to suggest that your name be corrected each place that it's misspelled.
and this is on the October.
Yes.
No.
No, this is the December 14th. The December 14th meetings. Okay, so
Yeah. So the present.
first thing that we did in the December
Here I
14th
am.
meeting was accept the minutes of October, right?
Mhm.
Okay. But I do think that we need to make sure that your name is spelled correctly. And it's misspelled in both the second and third item. Are there any other comments to be made?
Okay, I'm back, and everything's working normally. Can I? What was the first agenda item? I was out for the last 2 minutes.
We are talking about the minutes of the December 14th meeting. And the first item is fine. I would like to see, however, a note that the November 2020 meeting was canceled, just to keep the record straight. So that if someone is looking.
Okay, I could include that in the minutes. Or of the past minutes, or in these
The
minutes?
past minutes, the minutes of the December 14th meeting. Can you amend the minutes to say the November meeting was canceled? Is that legitimate? Those of you-
I can add that, but I can't answer the question whether or not that's legit. Maybe a past chair, or do we have a consultant in the room who could advise?
I think that it is perfectly legitimate to make an amendment just to keep the record of the minutes straight.
Okay, it's just that I don't think it's an amendment, right? Is it just it's just an edit to the previous minutes that's
Yes.
added?
Yes, it is,
So,
yes. And I also suggested that you spell Rick's name with a K rather than an H.
oh,
Okay,
okay. Those two edits are done. I included in the minutes, you noticed, since they were sort of read, the bylaws, and also, the 40B, language that was, that Rick included, in his email in preparation for the meeting. For the 40B discussion with the selectmen, those two things, which made the minutes quite lengthy.
right. And it is, in fact, it would be number 6 in the minutes. And I think that my personal opinion is that it's perfectly fine to include that language, but for someone who is coming to this without ever having seen it, the letter J doesn't mean anything on
Okay.
the minutes. And I think that could just go away. And I wonder whether it's possible to fix the spacing so that it just has, it just all fits together. Does anyone have other comments? I seem to be doing all the talking.
If there's no changes, I would move that we accept the minutes as amended.
Okay, and do I have a second?
Oops, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Laura put her hand up. Okay.
Laura, you can have it.
Thanks. I
We're
forgot to
good at
unmute.
giving you thanks.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, you are.
Okay, Don. Rick moves, Don second.
Okay, so I am now going to read the list of people who are here.
Did we vote?
We are going to vote now,
Oh.
and I'm going to call on you.
Oh, yes, that's
Don.
right.
Aye.
Laura,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
and I, so it passed unanimously. Okay, and the second piece is the report on the Massachusetts Historical Commission Historic Districts meeting that Gloria and Don and I attended, and I asked Don to give a report about this. Go ahead, Don. Over to
Okay.
you.
We met on January 6th via Zoom. Chris Skelly, who is the Director of Local Government Programs for the Massachusetts Historical Commission, conducted the workshop. And I sent to everyone copies of the slides for the presentation. And it basically has, all the information that I think we would need at this particular point to understand what the local historical commissions are. We went over the steps that are involved, and you can take a look at those rather than repeating them here. But some takeaways for me were that, first of all, we knew that the size of its local historical districts could be varied. They can be from an individual house, and as I learned just on our meeting on Wednesday, Nantucket, the entire town is a historic district. The other thing that I took as a takeaway was the fact that a lot of people have a misconception about national historic districts as opposed to local historic districts, and that Chris was quite clear, made several times, that the national historic districts are essentially honorary. They have no effect on the owners. They have no legal authority, actually. It's just sort of an honorary position. So in having a local historic district, I mean, if we think of the Macintosh district, for example, right now, it's just an honorary position. It really doesn't really impact the owners. However, if that converted to a local historic district, then it has some teeth with as far as any kind of enforcement of any kind of regulations that result from making it a local historic district. The other thing that I thought was interesting too, and this sort of came toward the end of the meeting, and it hadn't struck me before, but the use of creating local historic districts as a way of enhancing the demolition delay, that it was perhaps something I was thinking as an afterthought as far as the Mills House was concerned, that one way, in addition to just imposing the demolition delay of the 6 months, would be to have moved forward and attempt to make a local historic district.
Was that something you thought came up with, or was that what was presented at this workshop?
It was not specific to the Mills House, but it was presented at the workshop that is a way in which you could put some teeth into a demolition delay. Rose, unless you interpreted that somewhat differently.
No, I agree completely. I also found an absolutely wonderful piece, and thank you for sending out all of that material, Don, because there is some very good material in there, especially under number 7, in that there is actually a flow chart for what you have to do in order to become a local historic district. And it is really quite complex. And Chris said, oh, it's so easy. 8 simple steps. Oh, not exactly. Yes, Laura.
Thank you. So my question is, we discussed this in the past, and we thought that that a homeowner would have to initiate this, but it looks like that's not the case, that it has to be done from town government or committee first, or?
Yeah, the first step is the appointment of a local historic district study committee. And that's the group that is created or established by the select board. Again, Rose, if I'm off on here. And that's really the committee that pulls together all of the necessary information about boundaries, about bylaws, about all the issues that are connected with creating a local historic district.
Right.
Eventually that information is put together in a report that goes to the Massachusetts Historical Commission and the Planning Board.
Oh, wow.
Public hearings are involved. Then it would go to town meeting.
So if we've never done this before in Needham, is that
Right.
correct?
That's correct.
Right.
Where's the originating source, and what would they know how to handle this?
The source would seem to me to be, from my reading of it, the source has to be the homeowners themselves, either
Okay.
a homeowner or a group of homeowners. Now, we can certainly be involved in that, but we're not the people pushing this.
Right.
We will be consulted, but the study committee will, and correct me if I'm wrong, Don, but the study committee will include people from the neighborhood.
Right.
Okay.
And, those who are really impacted by all of this.
Yeah.
And the study committee is at the state level or the local level?
No, it's
Trying-
it's Needham.
Yeah, these
It's
are all
Needham.
local. It's all local,
Okay,
but it only
Okay.
needs to go to the state for review at
I
some
see.
point in the process.
Okay,
Oh.
that's okay.
Well, so the first thing that has to happen, you said, is that you have to have a local townwide study committee.
No, you have to
No, it's
have,
not.
no,
Go ahead, Rose.
Don. No, go.
No, I was just going to say the first step was the appointment of this local historic district study committee. And they're the ones that are going to look at all of the resources that are needed in order to provide the application for a local historic district. So they're going to have to determine boundaries, if it's an unestablished district already, if it's a neighborhood, whatever that might be, or if it's an individual house, that includes the boundary. Some
I would assume that that would include the homeowner or homeowners.
Yes, it
Right,
must include them.
Yeah, think of this thing as it's not just a linear process, but rather as you move along, you're trying to bring in as many people as possible involved in this. So by the time it gets to town hall or town meeting, you have a rather substantial support group. You're involving all of the people who are the stakeholders in this district, and you also have people outside of the district who may serve as supporters when you get to the public meetings.
Right. And
So-
one of the things that was discussed was having those supporters be willing to speak at the town meeting. You could have a lot of people who are really in your corner, but then they refuse to speak at town meeting or at the public meeting rather, sorry, the public meeting. And then the whole thing just kind of falls apart because it doesn't seem to have the support of the public involved. Does that make sense?
So the
Uh,
slide says that if a local historic district commission already exists, then that commission acts as a study committee. We don't have one of those, right?
No,
Right.
we don't.
So how do we get one of those, or what do we do instead, I guess?
It's my understanding that the committee would be appointed by the select board.
Oh,
Is that right, Rose?
Yes, and it would be our suggested group of homeowners would be part of this.
I see.
We get a lot of input, but it's not our process.
Can, I have a question.
Mhm.
Where is it stated? Are there bylaws that state that this is initiated by the selectmen versus the historical commission?
On the material that you received, there is give me a minute to see whether I can find it. It's called Deciding If a Local Historic Commission is for You. And I think this is where there is a timeline in number 7. And it actually shows how you go through each step. I'm not sure that answered your question though, Jeff. Sorry.
Well, my question is very specific. You know, are we dependent upon the select board to initiate the process? Or can we form appoint the local historic district study committee?
No, I think it has to come through the select board. And so I think part of this would be an education effort on our part to inform the select board of their opportunity to create such a committee to explore the possibility of the district. Now, we might also provide input as to assisting as to what target, if you will, would best be suited for a historic district in effort to make a first one, a first step. Because I think once we have one, we would have become more familiar with the process, and it becomes, I think, a little easier to be able to gather support once one exists before.
Well, there are different feelings on the select board about this.
Mhm.
And I'm being a town meeting member and knowing the process of that, it seems unfathomable to me that we could ever go through a process like this to enhance a demolition delay. even if we increase the demolition delay to a year, I do not think that we could go through, it would be challenging
Well,
to go through a selection and public hearing process in
Uh,
a time frame to get it voted on, or get it vetted.
yeah, Jeff, I think you're mixing two things together here.
Yes.
I only mentioned this as an option to a demolition delay as one aspect of creating local historic districts. That's not the ideal situation at all. So I think what we should focus on is how we go about creating, under normal conditions, our first local historic district in Needham.
And I think that one way we might be able to do this is if you take a look at number 7 in the material that Don sent out to you, there is a PDF there that talks about the timeline for establishing a local historic district. And the board and the whoever the nominating organizations are, and we can be one of them, work to develop this local historic district study committee. And then that committee meets with the MHC staff. They conduct a property owner opinion survey, which ought to be all in favor, or we haven't done our work. Educational material is prepared, there are informational meetings, and the preliminary study report is completed and sent to the MHC, Massachusetts Historical Commission. And they review it and give us some ideas. We hold a public hearing. A warrant article is prepared along with the final report. A map and bylaw is submitted to town meeting. And then town meeting has to vote approval with a 2/3 majority.
Correct.
That's big. And then it goes, if it is approved by the town meeting, it then goes to the Attorney General before it is filed with the town clerk and then recorded at the Registry of Deeds. And that creates the local historic district. It's all laid out for us, but it's a really
Okay.
task.
Question, do you think this is something we should consult with the town council on first before we start going forward?
Oh, good question. What do others think?
I mean, it
Hello.
ends up having to go to the attorney general. I love how they say on the end of the slide, that's it, just 8 steps. It's easy.
To which I said, thanks,
Yeah.
Chris, just 8 steps.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I don't see how it could hurt. I just feel like, that's his, I think the job is to look into this and make sure we're following the things we're supposed to follow. We're new at this.
Right.
Just a thought.
Yes, Jeff.
I would disagree in that as an initial step, because at the initial step, I think that we have more information than the selectmen and the town council. And given the fact that the process is going to have to be initiated by the selectmen, I think that we will get informed. I think the town council will get brought into the process, but I don't think we should, look at that as prerequisite for us. I think our first step would be to get the potential candidates appointments for that study committee.
Yes.
Right?
I
And
agree with that.
And then I think we would have a meeting with the selectmen, they would authorize it. And at that point, I think that would be then, once they see that the process involving the state and the selectmen are very informed about getting approval from the final approval from the state, the Attorney General, because they have to do that in any regards to some bylaws and such. So
And also the MHC will be advising us all along the way, and they would tell us if there was something that was going to set off alarms in anybody's office.
I think the most important aspect for us to focus on is garnishing that community support and going through the public hearing process. So the first thing that the conversation between the select board and the historical commission, well, that will be the first thing that will sort of be a part of the public conversation that will bring attention to people at town meeting. Then when it's presented to the board, there will be public hearings before they vote. Sometimes they have, public hearings is just an agenda item on their weekly meeting on Tuesdays. And sometimes public hearings, given that there are going to be quite a few people, they might schedule, another room or another time. And this one's, I think this is big. I would say this would require, I think, 2 separate public hearings, because we don't want to go to looking for town meeting approval and people feeling like, oh, this wasn't given ample opportunity for discussion, and getting that 2/3 votes on zoning laws and getting something that's really hard for people to understand. That people have to feel comfortable with what they're voting for. So that's why I think that public process is so important.
Could I suggest, I'm sorry, Don, go ahead.
I was just going to say that when you're talking about public hearings, there's what the select board generally has as public hearings for whatever issue may come up. This process involves a specific public hearing for the creation of a local historic district.
Well, the selectmen, where often they give an agenda item at their Tuesday meetings.
It's not on their agenda.
It won't be on their agenda item. It would be a separate meeting held by the study committee would be holding as I understand it, the study committee would be holding the public hearing.
But I think,
and
knowing how town meeting, if this is authorized by the selectmen would chair it. They would hold it, and they would hold the discussion, because after the hearings, the next vote, right, is that the selectmen have to approve it to go to the next step to the state.
No. It's,
Actually, that timeline in number 7, and I will send out that particular piece to everyone, because I think that this is something, you can tell me what you think, that ought to go onto the agenda for February, because it does need much more discussion. We have talked about Warren Street on many occasions, and we haven't moved on it yet. So let's start to think about what we do next. Yes, Don.
Yeah, it seems to me that we have possibly 3 options for potential first historic districts. We have the Warren Street neighborhood, and we really haven't moved off of that. We really haven't done any follow-up for some time now. Mo Handel's house, he's very interested in a single one.
Yeah.
And it struck me that perhaps the Macintosh Historic District might be the easiest first historic district for Needham for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is it already exists as a historic district, even though it's in the National Register. But transitioning it to a local historic district, it has already, it's identified as a historic district. We're just sort of legitimizing its local historic district status. And it seems to me that you already have a lot of buy-in for that, especially from the surrounding neighbors who showed up for the public hearing that we had for the Mills House.
Right. Okay, shall we make that an agenda item for next month then? When we talk about how we identify a place and start to work on this? Okay?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes,
Okay, let us move on to the letter that Gloria drafted to go to the CPC about money for digitizing the marriage records. We have in the notes that the marriage records would be 1919 to the present. And do you have any comments about Gloria's letter?
just a question, Rose, when is that? Because I know that's already a project under review by CPC.
Mm-hmm.
So is this letter just sort of adding to the, to
Adding
the
to-
request?
Adding some weight to the whole thing. And
Okay.
okay, and all I would say is that there are a couple of typos that can be fixed easily. But the sense of it is, I think, pretty clear. Yes,
Does
comments?
she, does
Yes.
she know when she's, this is coming up to CPC? I should know that, but I'm looking right now.
Okay, please do.
Just, we have traditionally supported the town clerk in preserving their records, and it goes back a number of years with the CPC, as indicated in her question and answers. It goes back to 2012, and at that time, the commission had supported her requests. And at one point, she was going in annually to preserve the physical records. So I would say that's just a continuation of that, and we would continue our support.
Okay. In that case, could we agree that the letter with a typo fixed can go to the CPC? And could I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Okay,
second.
and a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Rick. And I did see your hand again, Laura. Okay,
I'm
yes,
sorry, just before, I mean, yes, but I just wanted to also mention that the proponent of this is actually the clerk, the clerk of the town clerk's office.
Eaton.
So,
Yeah.
so that letter definitely should go to, shouldn't it go via the proponent? I don't know.
No.
Gloria says that it should go to the CPC, probably with a copy to Teddy. I mean, Teddy knows that
Okay,
we're in favor of it, but
It's
that's,
coming from us, I think the proponent requested support
yep,
from the,
okay,
from the historical commission. So that's we don't have a
okay.
vote in
I
it.
think okay, I think Peter Pingatore is assigned to that project,
Mhm.
but I can yes, is that right?
Will you check
That's-
on that?
Yeah.
That's who the
I will.
letter is addressed. That's who the letter is addressed to,
Oh,
right?
okay. Yeah, he should be the liaison then. Okay.
Okay, in that case, do we have a motion to adopt this? We have a second. Do we, I'm going to call the roll. Don,
Aye, in favor.
okay, Laura,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
and me too. Okay, I'm starting a movement.
No, you're joining it, Rose.
I'm joining it. Oh,
It started.
absolutely.
But that's a huge thing that you're joining.
It is. Okay, an update on the proposed demolition of 1177. As Gloria says in her notes, we don't have any new information. We haven't received anything from the building commissioner.
I have an update.
You have an update, okay.
I
Jeff,
do have an update.
go ahead.
Well, as discussed at the last meeting, I followed up with Dave Roach and spoke to him the day after. Now, of course, he says he talked about the fact that things are being made easier because of COVID, in that they're doing permits online now. They've never accepted that before. All right, so all the things in regards to sending in 7 documents and so blah blah and so on is not something they hold the people to. And he said he would accept a request for that from them, that they were requesting the said demolition permit without requiring all the forms to be filled out and I's dotted. But and he also didn't want to necessarily have to hold them accountable to disconnecting utilities and all of that at the time of application, which I said, that's all fine, however you want to do it to make it easier, but certainly shouldn't we stick to certain tenets of the process in that they own it, because the letter showed that just said that we'd like to get a jump on the demolition process. And can we provide for the permit beforehand? And I was like, and then he says to me, no one's going to save that house. It's not really worthy of saving. Are you really going to, vote to delay the demo? Which I said, I sort of in some ways agreed with him, in my looking at the property, but I said, out of fairness of anybody who has to go through this process, all right, for us to waive sort of the fact that they even own it. Because I said, would you accept a building permit from somebody before they own the house? And if and then I asked the question, if a previous owner applies for a building permit and then they sell the house and the new owners come in and submit, can they still, work off that same permit? And he said, well, no, they would have to redo the permit as their owners. I said, well, therefore, I think we should hold to that. So when he has a proof of ownership from them, he will then forward a letter to us saying that they are the owners and he has received a verbal confirmation application for the demo permit. And that's when our clock will start ticking. Okay. So until we get notification from Dave Roach that the current owners of the house have applied and that they currently own it, have applied for a demolition permit, we're not to meet, we don't meet and vote on this.
Okay, and we can hope, Rick, that he has learned that you're not the chair at this point, so he doesn't send it to you. But we'll see. If he does, you know where to send it, to
Yeah.
Gloria. And then the clock starts ticking. Okay, that's very good. Thank you very much for doing that, Jeff.
You're
Our
welcome.
next item is the select board discussion about the 40B review, but they didn't talk about the historic buildings at all. They spent their time talking about affordable housing and access and things like that. So it simply was not an issue that came up. We should keep watching to see what happens with their discussion of 40B. And if they do plan to go to a discussion of historic buildings. But at this point,
I talked to John Bullion at tennis, and just asked him what did it come up for, and we're not, we're not under the thumb of 40B, and he said, well, he doesn't think we ever will be. However, I think it's important that they said that they're just updating the language on the bylaw, so the bylaw is accurate, okay? And without it really being an impact on anything in relevance to that. So that language that we saw, that we read, that Rick shared from their minutes or their agenda, I mean, that's the most of the discussion that they're gonna have, and then unless we say we want to edit that language, they're gonna go forward with that and make that part of the bylaws. So are we comfortable? We talked at length about that language, and everyone really didn't see any reason to edit it. I suggested I had a little issue with the process, but everybody else was okay with it. So I think it's an approved, already approved to assume. Is that correct?
I don't see anything wrong. We're talking about in the minutes, the historic preservation piece. With the thing that's labeled J.
Where it says with developers should consider, if things are not on Macris and are not on the inventory, but might be historically relevant, or I don't remember what the language
Okay.
was.
The language says that the things that are listed on Mass Cultural Resources Inventory Systems, MACRIS, are preserved to be significant, but other buildings may be significant as well. Developers should consult with Needham Historical Commission if their site includes an existing older building before submitting a project eligibility application. And my objection the last time is, what does a older building mean? It's 2021. What does an older building mean now? I don't know.
Well, and it is vague, but and if an older if someone just looks at a 1950s ranch, what are the thousand of those little ranches that are getting demoed left and right, and if someone interprets that's an older building, you should go consult before you do anything. You should go consult with the historical commission. So someone's going to come to our meeting, and we're going to say, what are we going to say? Well, you're not on the inventory. So there, and you're not historical anyway. We really wouldn't want you to be on the inventory. So there is nothing for us to vote and nothing for us to consult to you about, other than you're free and clear, And even if there is something that's older, say there is something older that we would like to have a conversation about. If it's not on the inventory, and there's nothing, we don't have any authorization to impose anything, right?
So
We
the
could say,
town
gee-
doesn't have an issue with like, and I should probably know this, but in Newton, if something was more than 50 years old, it had to go before the commission.
Right, because that's what their bylaws say. That's basically their rule.
So
they have a
50
bylaw that anything over 50 years old is on their inventory. We don't have such a thing, and there could be
it's
there
not
are
on their
some-
inventory. It's not on their inventory necessarily. It's just that's the cutoff for whether it has to go before the historical commission. So Needham does not have an age.
No.
Okay. Well, wow. Okay. So
Yes.
yeah. So then Rose, I don't know how they could define old if they don't
If they don't
have a
define,
number, right?
I mean, Dave Roach could say, "Oh, that's old, so you should go to the historical commission." There are some old houses here in Needham, right, that are worthy of preservation, but the owners chose not to have their house put on the inventory, right? So with that old house not on the inventory, and we would like to save that house. And that, but yet, so they come to us and say, we've been told because we own an old house, but it's not on any, it's not indicated anyway, we should come to you. Our hands are tied. We can sit there and say,
Maybe-
we'd love to preserve it. We would love to impose that
What do you-
6-month
Jeff, what are you
demolition
saying?
delay. We
What-
would
what are you-
love to
what are you
implore
saying?
you that you don't
Jeff,
develop that
what-
house, but we
okay.
have no
Jeff-
authorization.
Yeah, so what is your point? To take that language out, leave it in? What is your point?
Yes, that was the point that I made last month, that I think we should take that language out, edit that language.
All the buildings? That phrase?
Yeah, I mean,
I think the town has to, I mean, I know it's probably much bigger than this, but they have to define what that is. It's too vague. It's too, there's
Amorphous.
nothing we can do without a specific age. I don't know how we would
Unless
solve
we
that
said-
problem.
and Leslie said that they come to the historical commission and ask about being put on the inventory. Because
That might take longer.
I
Hmm,
see
right.
two
Go ahead, Rick.
One is that it isn't bad to have it in the sense that if that would, bring people it would bring things to our attention. However, we know that there are things that are very specific that are in either the bylaws and so forth, and things are not brought to our attention, even when they're specific. So, we've got this choice, leave it in and maybe we get a little bit more information as to what's going on. Even if it's not on the inventory, at least we realize something has happened that sooner than after it occurs. Or we just say, no, when it doesn't, you can ignore us. No, it's nice that they thought of us.
yeah, I don't think that. I don't
Does
think they
anyone-
want really to spend a lot of attention, like you said, Rosemary. They don't really want to spend any attention or time, discussing or re-evaluating that language, and it doesn't put us at risk. So,
Laura,
I mean-
what were you going to say?
I was just gonna say, do we think that's something that should be talked about? That there be a certain age of home? I mean, there's precedent in other towns and cities. Newton's probably not a good example, but maybe, I could find out from towns like Arlington, towns that look more like Needham. What do they do? Because otherwise, any house that's not on a register can just be done with whatever as the developer wishes. And if we want to sort of have a little more control over some of these things. Now, I'll give you an example. When we moved, Mark, I can't hear. When we moved, we were able to we had a ranch on a nice street in Waban, which is a really nice part of Newton. We were able to get the demo permit for our buyers who we knew were going to take the house down. I don't think you can do that anymore. We went to the historical commission. It was interesting because even though the house was 50 years old, it was not historically significant in any way. But that was a decision that, they had to follow their guidelines. The guidelines are, is it, regardless of age, is it historically significant? Does it memorialize an important person? Does it hold a place on a sacred piece of ground? And the answer was no. And the house got torn down. But at least the age allowed, it to come before the group. Now, having said that, you could end up having we could have a lot of work because this town, as you know, they buy, they tear down, and they rebuild. So that could be a contentious and completely unrealistic thing for us to think about. But if you don't have an age, you're limited to those whatever properties that are on the PDF, basically, right?
correct.
Yes, exactly. And I remember last month, Gloria saying, when I complained about the language, she said, don't go there. just don't go there. And, maybe she's right that we
No,
shouldn't. But what if we did a quick and dirty survey of our matchmake towns and see what they do for,
I'm happy to try to work on that if
If
that
I,
will help.
that could be.
I think
fun.
it's, I think it's a whole nother agenda item. I don't think that
Okay.
that's within the boundary of this discussion on this
Oh, I
agenda item.
definitely think it is. It's not worth, I mean, we can't solve it tonight, but I absolutely think it's relevant to what we're talking about.
I think it's relevant, but I don't think that it's, within a boundary, because think it was not it's considering changing the qualification for the demolition delay, all right, and including an age limit on that was not the agenda item, and that was and what if we were coming up for that discussion? Laura, you just said it. It's not going to fly. In
Yeah,
Nino.
it's a
it-
thing for another time, but it doesn't mean we don't look into it and get back to it later.
I mean,
That's all.
I think we need to focus on. I think we should focus on local
if we're
districts.
looking at
Without,
Okay, Rick, go ahead.
something that was put in to update the language, and that the town thought of us and asked that developers talk to us, which is something which is a little bit of an achievement, that A, they even remembered who we are, and that they actually added us to the list, that a developer would come and talk to us. I do not think that's a bad thing.
Okay.
And I would prefer to, I mean, so we're talking about the language of this particular policy statement about 40B developments. So I don't think that's a bad thing. And then expanding it to look at what other towns do is perfectly relevant. So I think it's an appropriate thing to do.
Mhm. Okay, thank you very much, because Rick, you've got a lot of history with all of this, and you know how significant it is that we are even involved in this. But I think finding out what other towns do would be, personally, I'm intellectually curious at this point. I just want to know.
In my mind is Arlington. If anyone after this meeting thinks of others, they could email to me. That would be great.
There is a group of matchmake towns, right, Rick, that the library uses to take a look at how it's doing. We could use the same
Just did a
list.
analysis of the, I replicated, God bless him, Greg's analysis back in 2014. I just did it last week, so I can.
Oh, okay, great.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so
I'll go on the record as agreeing with Rick that I think that the fact that language that was thrown in there for them to consider us, and that we don't change that, even though I think it's we're not relevant to the or not empowered to do anything, and since there's no harm or no risk to us, I think no reason to change it.
wait a minute. I missed something there. I had a small mind snap. Sorry about that, Jeff. You are suggesting that we just stay with the language and do some investigating of our matchmake towns, or what is it exactly?
I'm okay with.
Okay, so we'll just stay with the language as it is for now and
Yes.
consider taking a look at what other places are doing. And Rick has information about our matchmates, so that's very good. Now,
What is that called? Match what?
they're called matchmates, right?
Matchmates?
Oh, I'm
Yes.
not
Matchmate towns?
sure.
What was that again, Rick?
It's actually the first time I've heard of that term.
Oh,
Nice.
Laura, I just sent you the towns.
Oh, great, thank you.
okay. And
Hey, Rick, could you send them to me as well for the minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, so Arlington isn't even on that list.
No,
Okay, well, I'm gonna cross that one out.
okay. And the last item on the agenda for this time is new business. Does anyone have material that they want to discuss?
I just want to point out, I think you saw that probably as we're speaking, the selectmen on their agenda has the proposal or plan for the demolishment of the manor house at Ridge Hill.
Yes, yes,
So fairly, very detailed.
yes. It wasn't it. Extremely detailed. Going to be in the 22 budget, right?
Yeah.
I believe. Okay. All right. Any other new business? Okay. In that case, you'll be happy to have Gloria back next week.
No, you did a great job, Rose.
Thanks, Rose.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's exactly why I said that. Anyhow, enjoy the rest of the evening.
Do we need a do
Oh,
we
yes,
need
we
a
do.
motion?
I move to adjourn.
A second?
Second,
Okay, Don and Laura, and we are going to ask Don.
Yes?
Yes. Please, Laura,
yes.
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
and I say, let's go home.
No, I say let's go out. I'm sick of being at home.
True, exactly.
Okay.
Thank
Anyhow,
you.
I
Bye.
thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.